Hey everyone, it's Hurley from Inklips and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create two different fun and easy masked off one layer cards using these Neat and Tangled stamp sets with a bunch of different critters in it. And I'm also going to show you how to use these colored pencils and different distress inks to create some colorful cards and backgrounds. So for this first card, I'm going to show you how to mask off a bunch of different objects and show you how to do it really simply and easily, because usually I'm pretty scared of these kind of cards. So I'm starting off by using my Misty because this is definitely the tool you're going to want to use for this technique. And I'm picking up the two images I want right in the front. So I'm picking up the little dude with the axe and also this little girl on his side. And then I'm stamping that down in black ink so that I can have that for when we're coloring with colored pencils. And I'm also going to stamp it down onto a red piece of paper because this will be my mask for later on. I cut that out, but I'll show you that in detail later on how I did that in the video with my second card. But here I just cut it out and stick it down onto the piece here. This is a little bit of a cheaper way of doing it, but you can also buy masking paper, which is a little bit easier and it's more reusable. But if you just want to use them one time, this is great. Now those will be in the front, so now I'm picking up a bunch of different objects I want in the background. So I'm picking up the trees, the tree stumps, so I'm stamping those down in black ink right on top with the masks covered. So the people in the front will stamp, and you'll see that later on when I pull the masks off. And then I'm also stamping down the bird, a word bubble, and the sentiment which just says, "I'm quite fond of you," which I just love. So I'm stamping down that all in black ink, and then I'm going to remove the different masks that we have here. I put some adhesive on the back that kind of sticks a little bit, but it also is pretty easy to pull off after a while. So I'm just pulling that off, and a little bit of a residue was left behind with the adhesive, so I'm just wiping that off with my finger here, and then it's all good as new, and we can start our coloring after we're done wiping that off. So for the coloring techniques today, I decided that I never use my colored pencils just quite enough, and I never quite pull them out for a card because they're not super quick, but they're a really fun medium to use. So I decided for these cards, since they're really coloring heavy, I decided to just pull out my colored pencils, have some fun, and I'll give you guys some tips along the way as to coloring, and I did speed it up quite a bit and cut a couple of different parts out just so that it wouldn't be super long for this video. But if you enjoy coloring, sit back, relax, and I'll talk to you guys just a little bit as I color these images in and give you guys just a couple of tips that I learned with the Prismacolor colored pencils. Now you can apply really whatever I'm saying in today's video with any types of colored pencils. I do find myself going back to Crayola colored pencils a lot too because I do use those a couple of times in my videos as well. I find that there's a lot of different color variations you can get with any different companies, and some are really pricey, and so I like the Crayolas just because you can kind of get some really cool effects still with them, and I have a video, I'll link to that on screen right now if you click that little I button. But really any tips and techniques that I give in this video will be applicable to most colored pencils, so hopefully this helps you guys out just a little bit. So I'm starting off today's card with I use 3 different shades on each thing or sometimes I do 2 if it's a little bit of a smaller image, but I just like to give some depth and perception by doing that. So I start off my card by going in with 1 layer of each color, so then I start off with the darkest color where the shadows would be, so wherever close bead or things like that, or if you want to make a certain light source, it'll be farthest away from the light source, so you'll put your darkest shadow, and then I'll do the first layer of all of those, and then I'll come in with the second layer of it and push a little bit darker down now that I've got the colors in place. And also it gives you less of a wax buildup if you do it in 2 layers like that and kind of layer your colors up with a lighter hand. That way you won't have a ton of wax buildup since this are wax based, and if you get too much wax buildup on your paper, you won't be able to see the color as vibrant or things like that. You really want to work in layers with this instead of just laying down a ton of wax right at the beginning by just pushing down super hard, and it won't give you a nice blend either. It'll be a lot harder to blend some of the colors together. So then for a lot of these different techniques, if you want to add some texture, you can with those little lines, but I tend to keep the coloring pretty smooth, and I don't like to use Gamsol a lot with this. So for a lot of people, you'll see them using Gamsol with the colored pencils, but I do like to keep it kind of looking like colored pencils in the end because I do love the look of colored pencils with the different texture that they have, because if I wanted a smooth texture, I'd go for Copics, but if I want kind of a smooth texture with a little bit of dots in it, and you can kind of tell that it's a little bit rough, I go for colored pencils, and I thought it was just fitting for the images that we're using today. And usually I go for my Copic markers if I want a more smooth blend and things like that, but I love the different looks you can get with a bunch of different color mediums, and I like to keep them kind of looking like colored pencils a lot. So I decided that I'm going to just color these in by using a pretty simple color scheme because it's a lot of outdoorsy images. I decided to keep it really kind of muted colors, and then for the dress on the girl, I decided to make it a little bit brighter. Now for their skin tone, you'll notice that the wax kind of covers up most of the facial images or the ink that you've stamped down with. You can either use that same Misty that you have your stamps lined up in and maybe ink it back again so you can get darker lines. That's one thing that I love about the Misty is you can put the images back in if they're still lined up how they were, and then it'll give you those dark images again. But I decided I decided just to go over with the facial features that I covered up and just use a black pen to go over with that later on. And I'm not sure if I showed that in the video, but it really does darken up those lines and make them a lot more visible like they used to be. And so if you find that it covering up too much of the detail or lines, you can definitely go over it at the end with your colored pencils, with your pens, and or just stamp it over in your Misty again. Now for these trees, I decided to do it in layers. So instead of just blending with darkest from the top, I decided to go in each of the different layers and do darkest to lightest from each one of those, just to give it some texture and dimension. And I think it adds just a little bit more to those trees and makes them look just a tiny bit more realistic, even though we are kind of going for a cartoony look today. So to blend the whole thing out then, I'm going in with a lighter color and just kind of pushing harder on each of those, and you'll see that they kind of get a lot blended out there. I have to say, I love these images that are just kind of a little bit bigger and not too super detailed. That way it's really easy for a person who just wants to sit down and color them, and I really enjoy coloring, especially with these colored pencils. And I just decided that I was going to pull them out today, make a really simple one-layer card, because I usually kind of stay away from one-layer cards, but I find that they're super intriguing, and they just look really cool because it's all masked off, and you can create a whole scene without having a bunch of different details and popped up, whereas you can create kind of the scene with a lot of different coloring, and that kind of is what brings the whole eye to the card. And I love how that's all turned out today after we were done, and it's really satisfying after you're done coloring to kind of see everything come into life, and all your images that you thought weren't going to make it super awesome come to life on your card, and you can definitely see the whole scene being made, and it looks really cool. So for the white colors that I'm going to do on this dress here, and also on that little timber speech bubble, I just went in with a couple different grays, and I'm just shading that in like that. Now it turned out a little bit darker than I wanted it to, but you can just go in with a bunch of different lighter grays and do the same thing, and you get kind of a whiter look. And also, if you want to color in hair, you can just leave it kind of a little bit more, less blended out, and kind of show all the different strands in it to make a little bit of a different texture. And I added a bunch of different browns with a yellow, and it kind of looks like blonde hair here. So then, to finish off, to add some more details at the end here, I'm adding some of that Spectrum Noir Shimmer pen. You can also add Wink of Stella. They're kind of the same thing, and I love them both just the same. They just add a little bit of shimmer to your card without kind of it rubbing off on your hands, but when you tilt it in the light, you can just see it so awesomely, and I find it's a little bit hard to capture on camera, but it looks really cool in real life. Then to add just a little bit more detail and make it pop up just a tiny little bit but still keep it one layer card, I'm adding just some glossy accents to anything that would be kind of shiny. So I'm adding it to the axe, the speech bubble. I added it to some of their clothing like their earrings and things like that, but I also am going to add it onto the ground to kind of make it look like little pebbles of like dirt or things like that, or little stones that they're walking through the woods with. So I'm just adding a bunch of little tiny glossy accents dots along the border of the card, kind of fading out, and it just looks really awesome, like little stones in the bottom. And I love how it turned out with all the little texture and the little bumps you can feel after it's all dry. So that was the first card, and now moving on to the second one. This one is pretty simple, but I love how it turned out with all the masking here. So I'm stamping down this little teddy bear in the center of the card, and now this is a little bit of a smaller image, but I'll show you guys how to make it kind of a full card. But I just love this teddy bear. It's so awesome. And I'm stamping it down using some black ink. And then I'm going to stamp down the sentiment as well that says "Falling for You." Now I love doing it in the Misty because number one, you can mass produce the cards, so you can make them all in the same exact spot, but also it has grid lines on it, so you can match that up and line up all your sentiments and make sure that everything is super straight in the center of the card. So I'm stamping that down too, and if anything makes a mistake too, that's also great for the Misty, so you can double stamp it. And then after I'm done with that, I'm adding some hearts to the background around the bear, just kind of make it look like a Valentine's card. So I'm stamping those down as well in the same black ink. Now the masking isn't really in the stamping for this card, but I'll show you later on how you can mask this off to create a really fun inked background. So I'm going to show you that in just a little bit here, but first here's the bear's coloring. I sped this up quite a bit and definitely cut out a lot of the different parts of this. So I made it really short and compact so you wouldn't have to watch nearly as much coloring as you saw earlier. But if you guys enjoy it, here's a little bit more coloring just for this little bear. I'm using the same brown colors that I was using earlier. I just had them out on my desk, and I'm using the same Prismacolor colored pencils. So these give you a really smooth blend, and on this bear I definitely did a really smooth blend. But you can also add kind of a fur texture by leaving it a little bit rougher and adding some lines to the bear, but I decided to just keep it super simple in today's video. Now I also did want to mention I'm no colorist by any means, like I'm not super good with any of these coloring mediums. I just love kind of testing them out and using them, and I'm just going to let you guys know anything that I really learn with these. But this is kind of what I've learned so far, everything in this video that you guys have seen. So here's all my colored pencil tips, but I just love coloring them in, kind of playing with these colored pencils, playing around and seeing how they all work. But I love these Prismacolors. I've been using them for quite a while, and I decided to just pull them out today and have some fun with them. So now to create my mask for this bear and for the 2 different hearts, I'm just using some red cardstock here that I had laying around, just some scraps, and I'm just stamping down the bear image that I used earlier and cutting it out using just a scissors really close to the bear's body, right up to against that black line that we won't have much white space around the bear. And I'm just cutting it around, and I find that if you move your scissors around with it, it works a lot better when you're cutting, and you can get a smoother effect. And then I'm going to add some temporary adhesive around this bear, just with some adhesive that will stick, but it won't stick if you don't leave it there for too long, so you can kind of lift it up after a little while. So I'm adding that bear down. You want it to be just strong enough for it to hold, but not too strong. And then I'm going to come in with my Distress inks and just ink blend a really quick background, but it's super colorful, and it really gives this little bear kind of a grounding place, and I love how it just kind of contrasts his darker color here. So then I masked it off, and it won't come in contact with any of the ink here. You might want to do your coloring later on, though, just so it doesn't ruin anything, and so you won't spend a ton of time on it in case if any of the masks move or anything like that. So I'm coming in with the Mermaid Lagoon, which was my first blue color, and then I'm coming in with Abandoned Coral and blending that out. These colors that I'm using in today's video are kind of my favorite color combination you'll see here. And then I'm coming in back with my blue here, making it just a little bit darker. I love going back and forth between all the different colors to blend them out and make sure they're all super blended. And then I'm going in with this purple at the bottom. I think this is Seedless Preserves, which I love, with that blue there. And I'm just blending that again. Now you're going to want to make sure you kind of start off and tap your color off onto a separate sheet of paper. Now this will just make your color a little bit softer, and also it'll just kind of fade your color off and make sure there's not too many harsh lines. That top color is Fossilized Amber, so it's a really bright yellow color. And I'm coming back in with all my different colors once again, just to darken them all up. And then I'm removing my masks. Now the adhesive did leave a little bit of a texture in your coloring, so like I said, you might want to do your coloring after you do all of your ink blending in the background, but I still do love the texture that it gave the bear, so it was kind of cool in the end. And then I'm peeling off the heart masks to reveal all the awesome color that we did underneath it, and I think it just looks stunning once we're finished. So after I'm done peeling all those masks off, I'm deciding to just add some Wink of Style dots because the Distress inks are reactive with water, and since this is kind of a water-based product, it gives a really cool effect, and it gives that little shimmer to the background, like I did on the other card. And then I'm using this white colored pencil to go around the sentiment and just add some lines wherever it needs it to kind of emphasize the sentiment, because I find that it got a little bit lost being stamped on top of that blue and the purple. So you might want to white emboss your sentiment next time, or just use some white pen to go around with it, because I found that that would give a better look, and I actually ended up doing that after the video was done. And then I'm going to give some glossy accents over top of those hearts, the bear's nose, and the little drops on the sides too. And that about finishes up today's card, guys. I hope you really enjoyed seeing how to make these 2 different cards using masking techniques, so you can kind of mask off all the images to create a really fun scene, and also some really quick colored pencil coloring with these Neat and Tangled stamps that I just love, and that little bear and those little people are so awesome and really cool to have on your cards. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a big thumbs up. Don't forget to click that subscribe button on screen to become part of the Inklips family and never miss one of my videos. There's 2 videos on screen if you want to see more of my content here, and I would love for you guys to click those. There's also a link to my blog with a full supplies list, much more info, and many more pictures, and I'll see you guys very soon for another card making video. Bye!